Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Talking Ruggers. Yes, we're still here. We're still talking ruggers. Apologies for the absence over the last couple of weeks. It's been the Six Nations. It's been very busy. I hope you've been enjoying it and I hope you haven't been missing the pod too much. But if you have been, then don't worry because we have a phenomenal guest on today. He is arguably the king of grassroots rugby. He'll hate that I've said that, but he does so much good for the grassroots game, not only through his S&C, his strength and conditioning training, but also through the social media content he puts out there too. He really brings a positive spotlight to everything it means to play grassroots rugby. All those nuances, all those niche sayings, you'll hear them throughout this episode because this guy, he has a vocabulary on him. He's from the Southwest. He's from Bristol way. He's got all the sayings in the book. There's so many to pick out from this episode, but we get into so much detail around how you can actually improve your playing performance at a grassroots level through some simple, easy, quick steps you can start implementing today through your nutrition and S&C, some things that will genuinely help you, as well as delving into the world of social media, how to take a footstep potentially in your own S&C business or just generally through social media, starting your own enterprise, but also delving into the ins and outs of the grassroots game around the social media as well. So much fun chat because although the topics are quite serious, we have a good time when chatting about them because we're two grassroots lovers. So without any further ado, this week we are talking ruggers with Harrison Trains. Harrison, in your own words, for those who may not already know who you are, they're not a grassroots warrior, who is Harrison Trains?
Fairly simply, I'm a club rugby player who helps other club rugby players sort their rig out. Plus, I try to draw some attention to the grassroots game in general, as I try to with my game day vlogs and whatnot, but that is me to a T.
It's a chicken and an egg argument in that sense, isn't it? Because you are doing wonders for the grassroots game. You've definitely helped people not only in their own lives, but the grassroots game as a whole, the exposure you're bringing to it. But that takes us very beautifully into how you actually started out in rugby. Take me all the way back to the start. Were you a grassroots lad yourself, 5 years old down the rugby pitch being coached by your dad?
Funny enough, ironically, I actually wasn't. So
What?
none of my... Yeah, mental, right? So none of my family actually play rugby. They are a tennis family, which sounds horribly posh. They weren't,
God.
but they played tennis. Yeah, right? So we didn't actually play any rugby. I'm the first one of my family, immediate family anyway, to actually play rugby. It was at school. My school wasn't known for being a particularly big rugby school. However, I was fortunate enough to have a PE teacher who was, he was a Pembrokeshire boy, but he was quite a good scrum half. 12, 13, playing rugby at school, like had a fondness for the physical side of the game in my PE classes. And he sort of tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Do you play?" I said, "No." And he said, "Right, get down your local club and start playing." And literally the rest is history then. I ended up getting obsessed with it. Ended up dragging my parents all over like for county games everywhere and all this. And yeah, ended up indoctrinating my family into rugby away from the lesser cool sports like tennis. No offense, tennis players.
You clearly have an aggressive side to you then. Were there any like snapped rackets growing up or were you trying to keep it composed on the tennis court?
I got banned briefly. I wasn't an angry kid, right? I wasn't that angry. However, I did get banned from my tennis coaching lessons because I kept hitting my tennis coach on the shins. Yeah, that's not great, but yeah, it wasn't too aggressive besides that one thing.
I can just imagine like 7-year-old you whacking shins, just so irritated. Need someone to put that energy into. And clearly you found rugby, which is always good to know. I love to hear these stories of PE teachers at school getting kids to go to the local clubs, because I remember mine, not quite like that. I've always played rugby. I've literally been out of the womb chucking a ball around, but
yeah,
my PE teacher was so fond for it. He was a real positive light in my life, and it's great to hear that's the case for other people as well. So you clearly had that physical side to you. What position did you go in to start playing when you were about 13 years old? I briefly interrupt this episode of Talking Ruggers to not remind you, but thank you for your support of the podcast. And if you are enjoying this episode as well as the ones before, if you could go down and drop a like on it or rate it 5 stars, if that is your choice of podcast provider, then it would be greatly appreciated. Or if you want to go a step further, if you're an ultra fan of the podcast, then share it with a friend, because this is the best way to help us grow. And we want to try and help as many people out in this rugby space as possible and bring as much exposure to their brands as we can. So the more of you there are, the better this is for everyone. So thank you so much for your continued support. I hope you are enjoying the episode. Let's get straight back to the episode.
So 13 went straight in, and probably, I think at the time, I can't remember if we had flanks at that age, but I was playing 8. They tried me at prop because I was a fatter kid, as many rugby players are when they first start out. And yeah, I purposely was like, nah. I purposely was rubbish at it. I was like, I'm not being a prop. No offense to props, I just wasn't built for it. And I ended up going to 8 and then 7. And I played 7 all the way through the age groups up until like county, Bristol, all the academy stuff. Was always playing 7, a bit of 8. And then as I got to senior, I don't think I got faster. I think at senior level, everyone else got slower. And I ended up slowly getting shoved out of 13 wing occasionally. So I've been like fighting my way back into the pack here and there.
Clearly the undertone of tennis still exists, because you hear stories of, in particular, Jonathan Joseph, who was quite a handy tennis player, and obviously his footwork speaks for itself. So definitely treading in his footsteps, potentially a little bit more physical as well. But you are clearly a West Country lad with an accent like that. You mentioned Bristol. Shout out the local club. Shout out those local club legends who are helping you reach the pinnacle of your playing career.
Oh, so I play it now. I'm a one club man. I've only ever played at my local club, Nailsy in Backwell. And it's been, I love the sport, and, I'm keen at the grassroots level and keen on playing good rugby. The clubs, I've always just been happy to play with my friends, and that's always been the place to be for me. And the coaches I've had have probably been why that's been the case. My, grassroots or club, under 14s and the 15s onwards, my coaches then, I had 2, and they were like proper characters. One called Arnie Palmer. He was like the tight head, coach. He was the forwards coach, and he would give you all the dark arts, like all the ruck warfare, like make sure you know where the ref's looking, is he looking, that sort of coaching. And then we had my other coach, Dave Hudson, who was like the more strategic, more, at most age group rugby clubs, rugby years, they tend to have like the diplomatic one that deals with the parents. He was that one, a bit more strategic. He was the backs coach. So those 2, I had such a fond youth section that I ended up just sort of always being at the same club. And yeah, so I'm a one club man. That's the one shout out I've got. It's Nailsy and Backwell.
But you mentioned also reaching county rugby representation. How did you get to that stage?
So we played, I don't know how other counties worked at the time, but we had like a North Somerset one. So we went to North Somerset, did the district work, had like a competition there. It was actually quite a good little setup for the youth section, and then got picked up for county. Despite I don't have a left-handed pass now, let alone when I was like 15. So I was there based on physical merit alone, and played with like Gabe Ogra, Harvey Skinner was in that year. There was a de Glanville from Bath. I can't remember if he was Jake or not. No, his brother, sorry. Anyway, but yeah, some decent ballers back there. And then me, I had like long hair too down here. I was so out of place, but managed to stick around for that. Got into Bristol Academy for a couple of years too. And then sort of around probably 16, 17, sort of stopped doing both of those. I didn't actually want to play the academy and county stuff anymore. I was getting a bit to a stage where I was starting to fall out of love with it, a bit too much school, everything. And that's kind of, I actually had some time out of the sport around 20, I think it was, 19, 20 maybe. Had 2 years out, and that was probably down to the amount of rugby I was playing. Sort of began to fall out of love with it, and because as you would do if you're playing 2-3 games a week, I suppose, depending how much of a nose you are. And I ended up sort of phasing out a little bit. So, but yeah, played some counties, some academy. Back in Bristol days of old school Bristol, where I think we got pumped most games. I'm not gonna lie. Played against like Exeter and Sarries. They were putting cricket scores on us.
Yeah, I remember those days of especially county rugby, Dorset and Wilts stuff, where you come up against some absolute mutants from down Cornwall and Devon way. It's just like, goodness gracious. I don't know if I can hack this very much, but well, do you have any in particular like rugby idols from the professional game that you used to try and model your game after? I can't think of anyone who doesn't have a left-handed spin pass unless they hide on the right wing, because then of course you wouldn't really see it. Yeah, any particular players you're like, I want to be like that guy?
I always remember YouTubing certain players right before games, as you always do when you're a junior or even a senior still. I think Jack Spurger from Sarries, he was always one that I was like, I'd always watch his highlights right before a game. Hooper, too, Michael Hooper. Those two were probably the ones I would watch the most. And then occasionally Julian Sevilla, not that like I played like him, but he was one I'd watch too. But those three were probably the ones I'd always like YouTube the most.
The bus, yeah, probably sounds like you were built like a bus back then as well, mate. Carrying hard through the midfield. Absolutely
Yeah.
love to hear it. Do you have any good like stories from these times playing up? Any particular? Did you win anything? Like, because I know that I went a long time growing up without ever winning anything, and then towards the back end of my under 18s rugby, we started winning stuff, and I was like, oh my god, this feels great. But do you have any fun stories like that?
So when in the junior section, we had a good year, relatively. Like most of the lads were playing sort of county of some sort. We always played. There was two teams that were always in the top two. Like I think one was like a Bath Rugby, and had like I think Matt Bannerham was the coach or something, and they had a great team. And we always lost to them, and we lost every year up until our final year of juniors. And we managed to get, like, somehow secure this win. And like with lads that we had a few really good players, but some lads like were there because their dad wanted them to play, and like we were playing against these team that was like they were all so good. Same thing about the county, like they all had beards somehow at like 15, and that team there performed like it was. Every year, our coach always reshares it and tags us all because it's like the most fondest memory of our junior rugby is somehow beating these absolute giants, like physically and metaphorically, because they were like such an amazing team in the area. So
I
that's
know
easily
that
one of the
Bath
big.
team.
Do
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Well, I went to school in Bath. I went to Beach and Cliff School. Shout out the beach. But I grew up in Bournemouth in Dorset.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I went to school in Bath and played county rugby and like trying to get into the Bath Academy system. Of course, as well, you're well aware. Like half of Somerset goes to Bristol, half of Somerset comes to
Yeah.
to Bath, and a lot of those Bath lads played for Bath Rugby Football Club, not Bath Rugby Club, the
Yeah.
actual local side, which has the exact same name. They played literally about a 30-second walk from the rec. But that was the likes of, well, the peak of that team being Max Ajomu, who was
Oh wow.
in that team. Yeah, yeah. And then a load of other random names. Owen Dudman, I played with him at school. He's gone on to play for like Leeds Beckett and things like that. Some random names, but they were always a powerhouse. But yeah, that was when they were way younger. They then moved to like Chippenham
Oh
to
wow.
play rugby
Okay.
up that way as well, because Chippenham were a powerhouse too. And yeah, we lost to them in a couple county cup finals. I
That's mental.
digress. I
Yeah.
digress, mate. This is more about you than it is about me. So you've already painted a picture for me here. Like you're telling me about potentially being almost overworked on some occasions, especially in the grassroots game where you can potentially play a couple games a week. There's a lot to that. You've mentioned how in your playing career, you may have fallen out of love with it the closer you got towards the top, but you clearly learned some things along the way about how to advance people's playing ability. How did those things, both in terms of building an understanding around S&C to help improve playing ability, combined with the realities of grassroots rugby in terms of these people only have a certain amount of time. They've got to go to work on Monday and they're probably going to have about 10 pints on Saturday night. How did that then
Probably.
form the start of your S&C business?
I always was, thanks to my sort of upbringing, my family were always quite into training to some extent. A bit more on the endurance side. I came from, besides the tennis players, some marathon runners and whatnot. But we always had like a gym. So I was always quite obsessed, especially like some of my rugby idols being like pretty muscly, like men, like your Pococks, your Hoopers, your Jack Burgers. They're always built, like properly built. So I was always obsessed with that. So I ended up from pretty young age getting into lifting, like quite early on, and progressing that as much as I could do. And to some extent, I think this happens with a lot of lads where they start lifting because of rugby, and then sometimes rugby gets in the way of their lifting, and then gradually they sort of phase out, which is a sad thing because part of that's down to how they train and trying to become a bodybuilder and a rugby player at the same time, and how that's not effective and how they needed to adjust how they trained. And fortunately, I had some good coaches individually when I was younger, who sort of guided me in the right direction with styles of training, like shifting to something as simple as like training in a full body format. And that helped me sort of preserve myself for games more so. And that's something a lot of people, when they start training for rugby in the gym, is something they could quite easily make an easy switch for. However, like for me, it ended up being mental fatigue that got me. Like physically, I was able, especially the younger lads, they can really put them through the ringer and they're fine. Like they're like made of rubber. Whereas now I play one game and feel like I'm wrecked for 4 days now. Like
Me and you both, mate.
Like it was a mental fatigue for me at the time where I ended up phasing out of rugby, and it was more towards like I still played my senior rugby for a couple of years in my local club, and then it was the ego, I think, which made me hinder believing rugby for a bit. I think a lot of lads, when they go out of an academy system or whatnot, they can go into senior rugby and have an ego around it because they're not, I don't know, like a Bristol Bears player or something, or they haven't got the academy and they see their friends who are in the academy and they sort of have that resentment. I wasn't quite that strong, but I definitely had an ego going into sport, and because it was something that combined with never not playing the game, as far as I can remember, from 12 anyway, it ended up leaving a sour taste in my mouth. And I just needed space away from it to kind of recoup. And I didn't actually have plans of going back and playing. I sort of picked up like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and other things, but I ended up getting drawn back after watching. I think it was another Six Nations, which shows how important the tournament is. I ended up getting drawn back into rugby and thinking, I'll give it another go. That along with a text from a coach saying, do you fancy playing 20 on the weekends? have you still got your boots? And then it kicked off again. So the training, I still always trained, and then I came back to rugby, and then I ended up like people started saying, oh, like I see you train people still. Can I come and train with you? And then I ended up being like the guy in my local club at least. And then that combined with sort of game day vlogs and the content side of things kind of just sort of springboarded everything. It's been a while. It's been a few years worth of work, but it's springboarded into what it is now, which is sort of a full online coaching program, and ended up being where I am now.
What a story, mate. And it's a very common one as well, not just in regards to your story, but in terms of what you see a lot of young players doing, because I was definitely that young player who was like, right, I need to get as massive as I possibly can to be good at rugby. And it's only just dawned on me since I've lost a lot of weight in the last 6 months, how negatively that has influenced my game. I used to joke with my mate how I used to be so good. I peaked at under 14s rugby, like 16s. I was in my prime. Like I was the next big thing, best footwork in Bath Academy. And then all of a sudden I went to school and we had a bit of I wouldn't say it was toxic. It never felt like bullying or anything like that, but people used to take the mick out of you if you weighed anything less than 80 kilos. We had a set of scales in the gym, and if you didn't weigh 80 kilos, then you had the piss ripped out of you. And it was what it was, kids back then, kids will be kids, but it definitely warped my perspective of what was good strength and conditioning training. I was then just trying to max out my squat, max out my bench press, and it's just not healthy.
No, there's this weird thing within rugby. We have our own form of like body dysmorphia in the way that like your teammate and you're in an environment where size is almost rewarded regardless of the effect it has on the pitch. So if you're 135 kilo, like that, you're just referred to as a unit, or don't run down his channel. When in reality, as a player, players that are 135 kilo and tackle like saloon doors. They're just letting people through the line. And then you get players who are like 70 kilo and they absolutely level people. And it's nothing to do with the size. It is partially to do with the size, but size in rugby is over-indexed and performance is almost under-indexed at the grassroots level. You need that momentum, you need to change of direction, you need fitness, and such a big part at the grassroots level is being right in the right place at the right time. And if you're 135 kilos, you're built like a melted wheelie bin, you're not going to be able to get into those areas you need to be at such a cost, because it's not 135 kilos like Big Ben Tamifuna. It's 135 kilos melted wheelie bin, can't see your toddler under your tummy. Like it's not a good weight usually.
These grassroots sayings are cracking me up. You are full of them, and I absolutely love it. But the point still remains. You are exactly right, especially when you look at the top end of the game. And there's different facets to rugby. That's why it's such a beautiful game, because it's underpinned by physicality. Let's be honest. Having that strength to be able to, make tackles and carry the ball is an underlying point depending on your position, because then there's also the other two elements of strategy and tactics and technical ability. Because whenever I see clips about Finn Russell in the gym, all I hear about is he skips every sort of exercise possible. But I also hear the same about Tuipulotu as well, who clearly has the right physicality in the right ways, but they're both very technical, tactical players who lean into that side of their game to be a point of difference, whether that's Tuipulotu's technical ability in terms of maneuvering his body position to be able to bump players off rather than just completely relying on raw size, or Finn Russell's technical ability to throw passes into space. There's just different elements to our game.
Massively. I think, especially on the player-to-player basis, there's like some people are just gifted, like they have something about them. Sure, Finn Russell's not known for being the most physical, although he will put in a hit when need be.
He does.
But some people do have that secret sauce where they are just physically a bit of a freak. There's always like stories about Sonny Bill naturally being an absolute freak in nature. The stories, I think, although controversial, Izzy Folau was like known for not touching much in the weights room, and he was obviously a genetic freaky game. There's all these stories about players all over the world who are just amazing. And I think people do lean into that a little bit too heavy at the grassroots level. I think, yeah, I mean, you're probably not a genetic freak playing level 7 rugby, not going to lie. So there's probably there's a lot more merit in the S&C at the lower standards because there's so much more to be gained. But some players just get away with not touching much. I think Zach Mercer's another one, speaking of the old Bath boys. He's pretty sure he's someone... I might be throwing him under the bus, not that he'll be listening to me, but it's apparently he doesn't touch much in the weights room, and he's, one of the top 14's top back row, I think last year or something. So there's levels to it. There's some people don't need it. Some people just need to be left alone to do their own thing. Some people are in dire need of it.
I think there is a requisite baseline level of athleticism required to play any sport, let alone a contact sport, let alone to play a contact sport consistently over the course of a season. Give us some top tips for grassroots players that they can start to implement in their lives today, potentially who don't go to the gym or go to the gym quite infrequently without much information on how they can help themselves out in those areas of S&C throughout the course of a season.
So I think from the grassroots level, providing they're like getting to training fairly frequently, they're playing games fairly frequently, there's such a nutritional side of things, which a very simple nutritional fix for a lot of them, which will help shift a bit of timber, and by doing so, end up getting more from their engine, change directions a bit better. They might feel a bit quicker off the mark as well. And that's typically something as simple as sort of taking their weight in kilos. Say if they're 100 kilo, you times that by 1.5, and that will give them a rough figure for like a protein intake that they should hit per day. That's a really, really good thing to hit through the season. It's something so simple that I sort of advise people get into starting to look after themselves a bit when they play rugby. That alone tends to help them feel fuller, gain more muscle, and they end up sort of course correcting with such a simple target. That, and I'd say at the grassroots level, the biggest thing is a lot of the lads I see in my local gym who play for my club tend to be training like bodybuilders for the most part. They tend to be, I see them doing a lot of curls, particularly fly halves. They tend to do a lot of curls. I'm not even kidding. The 2 fly halves at our club, far more bothered by that. Yeah, far more bothered by that than anything else. But I think one of the biggest changes most lads make or ladies when they first get into training sometimes is switching to more of the weekly format from training like a bodybuilder to doing like a heavy session on a Monday, full body, heavy session on a Wednesday, full body, and then being a bit lighter on a Friday so that it complements their rugby rather than takes away from both their rugby and their training. That's one of the simplest things you can do at the grassroots level anyway.
I think that's a brilliant takeaway. I love how you picked the nutrition side first, mate, because that is something that keeps you going. Not that I have much experience or expertise in the area, but I know for sure ever since I shifted to just having a bit more, like just a small bit of detail into like reading the back of a food packet and picking, like I was in the shops buying honey today. Really niche, boring story, this one. Buying honey, and one was like organic honey, one was branded as like organic honey. You read the back, and the other one has all these different chemicals in it. The other one says 100% honey, and I'm like, just going that one step, and all I have to do is that one time, and I'll always go and buy that honey again. But it's those simple things to have a bit more nutrition in your diet, especially around protein. But one thing that I can vouch for from a player's point of view is when I made the shift from a bro split, doing push, pull, legs 6 times a week, to doing uppers and lowers and a full body plyometric session a week, just 3 sessions. My performance not only got better because I wasn't gymming like an absolute meathead, and I could then for not only move my body better on a Saturday, but also on a Tuesday and a Thursday where the training really counts, but also over the course of a season became far more athletic. It was twofold the gain. Like I was making more of the opportunities when I was on field, but also off the field, I was becoming an athlete.
100%. I think it's such a weird shift initially because you're doing like in terms of volume, you're doing way less, and people think, well, surely I can't be, training anywhere near as good when I'm doing half the amount of volume, if not even less. And it's more just like the quality sometimes, and more than anything else. Like you can sort of half-arse the bro split style, be perpetually sore through the season and miss all the sessions you're supposed to be hitting anyway because you're too sore, your back's fried because you've just been putting in 15 tackles, 20 tackles a game, and then you got to go do a full leg session on the Monday. It's not built like whoever made the bro split popular back in like the golden era bodybuilding was not piling into 120 kilo players and like trying to chop tackle and playing 80 minutes of rugby on a Saturday and then doing it on a Tuesday and a Thursday as well. So it doesn't mix up, unfortunately. As much as I like training like a bodybuilder sometimes in the off season, in season you need to be smart with it.
Yeah, 100%. There is always a place for a bit of hypertrophy training, trying to grow your muscles a little bit more. But as
Yeah,
we've
plenty of
seen,
arms.
as we've spoken about, yeah, especially in your, my pins need a bit of work, honestly. My legs look so skinny nowadays. But that's besides the point. There is always a place for a bit of it, but you don't need it necessarily. Like having a big player in your team is always good, but not every position needs to be big, especially if you are in a fly off. Like you should be prioritizing other areas. And I think, at least from my own experience, you can get sidetracked down this avenue of, I must get bigger, I must get really big to be good at rugby. And in reality, all you're doing is getting slower and slower. I remember I came back one time and I looked up and saw some space that I used to be able to get into the season before I put on all this weight. I looked back at the ball to catch it, and all of a sudden the space had disappeared. And I was like, wait a minute, I used to be able to get into that space. Now all of a sudden I have to carry into that space. It's not
Yeah,
quite the same.
you need to be a well-rounded individual, and I think there's so many good players at the professional level now that really personify that. Like, especially within, when I talk to players I'm coaching and whatnot, and especially around size and power, you can look at people like Ollie Lawrence, for example, who is like, you would never say that he's not effective in contact, would you? Like, him on a crash ball is
Yeah.
horrendous. I can only imagine what it's like to tackle him.
Your
But
man.
weight-wise, yeah, he's a your man, 100%. I think weight-wise, he's probably like 100 kilo, maybe less than, and he's probably, and that's an international level, and he's height-wise probably 5'10", 5'11". He's not someone who's like a huge stature of a man that would like relies on his size almost. He's just so athletic, speed, his change of direction, his ability to manipulate defenders. That's his point. And at the grassroots level, it's like being able to change physically that like a tiny bit goes so far because not many people are doing it. From your level 6, 7, 8 downwards. You can. There's low hanging fruit. The bar's low physically sometimes in the grassroots level, and few small changes can make a massive difference on your performance and help you stand out.
Most certainly, man. It's great to hear you paint that picture for players. But I want to talk to some potential coaches out there now who might be listening into this episode, seeing that you've gone down the rugby route of S&C coaching. What does your week, your day in a life look like as a coach? Because I appreciate, as a coach myself, especially an online one, you realize that far less of your time is spent actually coaching compared to being the HR manager, the finance manager, the marketeer,
Yeah, marketer, content
CEO.
creator.
Yeah, there's so many more things that go into your job than meets the eye. So for someone who may be trying to get into it, or people who just want to know a little bit more about what it takes to be an S&C coach in the modern era, especially in rugby, shine a light on what your week actually looks like.
So I'd say it's pretty coaching heavy in the front 6 hours of the day. I tend to start, if I have a local client who may be playing for one of the local teams near me, or if I can see them in person, I'll try to do that because I do still like doing that side of things.
That's
So
great.
it'll be like 6 hours, or it'll be a few hours in the morning, and then then I'll sort of speak to, the clients who live more abroad, or there's like a huge sort of touch point block in the morning. That's mostly like Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then I'll train myself. And then I tend to do the other half of my job, which is creating content. people might not know because they see, the odd post of mine, but the job's like 50-50 sometimes. You got to do marketing takes a huge part of the job sometimes, and trying to create that free content to help people, not only to sort of grow the game and to sort of help people who are trying to, play better rugby at grassroots level, or just trying to play for longer, enjoy the game more. I'll create that content in the afternoon. And then with regards to like rugby as well, like my weekends often taken up playing rugby as well, and I'll be trying to create game day content around it. Obviously not at the moment because I've got one chocolate shoulder. However, like in future, I'll be getting back to hopefully doing game day vlogs, and it's quite a routine week, to be fair. You sort of coach for like 6 hours. I'm sure this probably resonates with a lot of coaches. You coach for like all your morning, and then you create content all your afternoon, and it's a 50-50 job sometimes.
What advice would you have for someone who is trying to pursue a career in like online coaching and S&C without giving all your secrets away, that they may
No,
not
it's
realize that some of those things that, the people might not even realize how much effort you put into all this content and stuff. Like, what's something that you think would really help someone kickstart their online coaching business?
I think a huge part is like creating yourself as the brand in a way. I think you need to have, who you'd like to work with, who you work best with, and all that sort of thing. However, I think your personal brand is like who you attract is often who's best for you, because they will resonate with you. So for me, because I've always played sort of a grassroots rugby level, besides some county and academy stuff, I've always played grassroots, and it was my sort of friends and teammates who first came to me and were like, "Can I train with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure," sort of thing. And then it was just more and more I realized those were the clients that I did best with. So often it's more of a case of identifying who resonates with you most, which is often people who are like very similar to yourself, and working with that. So I think backing yourself to be the brand is a big sort of starting point, because it's quite nerve-wracking putting yourself out there in the beginning. I know, especially in a rugby team, because if you tall poppy syndrome, as soon as you poke your head out the parapet, they all start coming for you. But often from the rugby club, you've only got to endure like a week of getting the shit ripped out of you, and then they're like, "Oh, that's actually was really helpful, by the way, mate. I downloaded your program, by the way. That was really helpful." And they'll say it in private. They won't say it in front of the whole group, but gradually that the lads are buying into it, that they're supporting you, and now they're the most supportive bunch. They still take the piss plenty, but they are very, very supportive of it. So be a personal brand, but don't be too embarrassed to put yourself out there.
And as they should, take the mick a little bit. I mean, I think anyone who
Yeah.
has the courage to put themselves out there deserves to have a little bit of a rib tickler from time to time, because that's the whole point, of a public forum. You've got to challenge those who stand out. But if you can stand out and stand up and stay stood on your own 2 feet through those things, in particular because your heart's in the right place, not just because your head is going in the right direction, but your heart's in the right place, which I think resonates sincerely with you. You've got such a strong mission to help people who essentially really need it in the rugby space, those grassroots players who just don't even know what they're missing out on. So to actually reach those, to be able to communicate with those people is such a great thing, and you're providing them with such great value too.
There's a side of it where sometimes lads don't want to look too keen, I think, in rugby. Like, they don't want to be
Yeah,
seen to be
classic.
trying so hard, which is, understandable from the point you don't want to get the mick taken out of you sometimes. But there's, it's not, you don't even need to be that you want to be like the best player. For me, it's like helping people play longer. And it might be helping like an 18-year-old step up to the senior level, and they might not physically be there. They might be a bit light and a bit concerned with contacts. Or it might be, my favorite ones tend to be the lads that are like 35, for example, and they just want to play like 3-4 more seasons of rugby, because people don't realize how short or how few seasons they've actually got, especially when you get to like, how old are you? Oh, are you 20?
I'm 24.
24. So I'm 4 years older than you. So when I was 24, that's when people started dropping off. Whether it was because they gained a bit too much weight and all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, that's a bit too much effort now to go to training," or whether it was injuries sustained from not really having the dexterity or being strong enough. People start dropping off, and I love helping lads stay in the game just by sort of whether that's sort of helping them get fit again or whatnot. That's where the value of coaching is really for me, more so than it is, helping the elite ones.
I love that, mate. I love that so much, because I hate hearing people stop playing. Like, I hate it. Like, even down the pub, like, I'll go on a night out, I'll just start chatting to someone in a bar. I'll be like, "Oh, just talking about rugby and stuff. They'll ask what I do for a living." And I used to play rugby. I stopped playing when I was like, like 22. It's just like, there's
It's
so many
always that,
competing parties. Yeah,
yeah,
man.
they're
Like
always
it's,
reminiscent.
yeah,
Sorry, go
too
on.
right. There's so many competing priorities in people's lives. And oftentimes for a lot of people, their job requires physical labor. Like, I don't know how
Yeah.
some people actually do it. Play a game of rugby on the weekend and then can turn up to work on a Monday and have to lift bricks. Like, thankfully, we don't have to do too
mental,
much of
isn't it?
that.
Yeah, we sit on podcasts.
Yeah, we just chat about that. Yeah, I guess. Oh, arrogant of us. But no, it's great, mate, because you do genuinely help people. And what I wanted to say is I think it's hard to hate on pure passion. In fact, it's impossible to hate on pure passion. And it's a real niche example that I've got of it. But I've seen recently on social media, as I'm a social media gremlin who just spends his whole day on his phone, there's, Star Wars.
Yeah.
You can do like Star Wars lightsaber fights and stuff in real life. And there's like different forms to it. And there's all these different sorts of techniques. There's a whole world that people are unaware of. And I was watching this video and I found myself like hating on it. I was like, what are these guys doing? Like, come on, lads, get a real hobby. Then I watched them and how much they just loved what they were doing. They could not, it's impossible to hate on those people because they don't even interpret it as hate. They've just got so much passion for their purpose. And yes, it's slightly different to how you help people, but like,
Yeah,
back to the
I know
point
what
of
you
like
mean.
abusing people at clubs and stuff like that. Like, how can
If
you
do
hate
it
on
with
someone who's
passion,
just doing
yeah.
it with passion and purpose, but ultimately, as you say, for the good of the game? Like, if someone in rugby hates on me for my social media, in the back of my mind, I go, I don't say anything, obviously, but I'm just like, I'm doing this for you. I'm trying to create conversation around
Yeah,
rugby.
for the
I'm
sport
trying to make
you
the
love.
game more interesting so that you can keep going to watch games or you can still have a playing career. Like, don't hate on this because I'm trying to help guys. Like, that's the idea behind it. And you're doing it in a very, very specific front-on way, quite literally helping people. So it's impossible to hate.
To be fair, like I said, the lads have always been, they take the mick, but they'll take the mick about anything. You could wear a different t-shirt in. Like, they'll find something to take the mick out of at
So
a club.
rugby.
However, if you like try to like not wear awful clobber for once at a social or something, they'll come for you, they'll make a beeline. But with the coaching side of things in the Instagram, they all love it. And even like opposing teams, because you get it all the time, the stick that on your TikTok. Always. It is such shit chat as well.
Come on, come up with something new by now. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. And like even those lads in the opposing teams, after they'll be the first ones to come up and say, "Oh, by the way, I downloaded like so and so, or like I saw I'd made that change, and I really appreciate that. That was actually really helpful." I'm like, "Oh, cheers, mate. Thanks. Just trying to get on the game day vlogs."
Yeah, mate. Well, that's a far more literal example than my Jedi lightsaber example. That was incredibly niche from me. But you are right.
We got different algorithms.
Yeah, clearly, mate. I don't know how that came into my mind. Just people with pure passion. But besides the point, you are right. Like at the very least, it's a compliment to know that people are watching your stuff. It's like,
It is
my God.
nice.
I remember the first bit of hate I got when I was actually playing, when I started doing my game day vlogs, and people are like, just doing that to me, like level up, level up. Oh, I was like, oh yeah, stick that on your vlog. I was like, oh my God, you know who I am. That's crazy to me. Like, you know who I am. I was like, oh my God, this is actually
you're
unbelievable.
actually buzzing to be getting ripped, aren't you? You're like, I'm so happy. I've made it.
Literally, like you have, that's probably a narcissistic trait. Like to be unknown is an empty feeling, but to be hated or to be loved, at least someone cares about you in some way,
Yeah, it's funny to know. It's like like if the content's getting to the right place, at least it is funny to have that. And do you ever get any well thought out digs at all ever, or is it always just stick it on your TikTok?
Anyone who comes on here who does some sort of game day vlogs, I ask this question to about their best chat that they've received, and for me, I get like a level that up. That's a bit of creativity.
I don't mind hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. It's a middle of the road. If stick that on your TikTok is a 1 out of 10, this is probably a 5. At least it's specific. At least they know the brand. It's equally embarrassing when I'm coaching people how to tackle and I'm getting sat down like 3 times a game.
Yeah, that's not so good. That's not so good.
Yeah, not great for the brand. That happened in the Loose Heads game I played in the other week in a charity match. Oh my God, it was so embarrassing. The guy ran over the top of me. He's like, level that up. I was like, oh, for God's sake.
No.
I think that footage is corrupted, actually. I didn't get that one, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I won't be collaborating on that one. Yeah. The chat, to be fair, some of the chat's been okay. Some of it I've had before. I've had a lad from Clifton Rugby. They're twos. I think I posted something on the morning of the game. It was like a scheduled post or something. It was about physical dominance, or it was like a post about pretty like Genge or what so Corny Laws, and I got flattened. I got absolutely flattened by off a kickoff, and they were like, "That wasn't very physically dominant, was it?" And I was like, "Oh, he's even looked at the post this morning. They did their research before they came at me." Yeah, it wasn't a good one. Some of the chats are right. Some of the chats are awful. I can't. Yeah,
Oh, that's brilliant. They've woken up that morning and thought, you know what? Here's my
I'll
chance,
do my
my
research.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. Have you had any other good bits? I'd love to know some more chat that you've got, good or bad.
For the most part, it tends to be stick that on your TikTok, or it's so boring. Or I'm trying to think. The worst bit, no one ever mentions Instagram either. It's always TikTok, which is a bit boring.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come off the top of my head if anything is popping out. Nah, I'm actually super fortunate. Most people that end up speaking to me at games or whatnot tend to be like positive. I don't know how other people's experiences have been, because you tend to think you end up gaining some followers, you tend to get some hate, but it's pretty good. I think in the rugby space, everyone's they get shit chat, but I think rugby players are known for that sometimes. So for the most part, everyone's been pretty sound. Like it sounds like daft, but everyone's been pretty nice to me in terms of like the content.
That's great, mate. I always love to hear that. That's brilliant because, yeah, at the end of the day, you are doing good for the game. I think myself after games, like, there's always sometimes an air of hesitancy around people because one thing that I love about this is that I am the media. I control the media. I get to choose what clips go in and out of this game, and I'm on the mic as well, so I get to commentate on this. So sometimes in the past, I remember we had the away fixture of a game where I just flew into this bloke. I called him like Nemani Nandolo off wish.com because he was built like Nandolo. He was bold, but like he had a left boot as well, just like Nandolo.
Oh, nice.
And he kicked their goals for him. But I was like, he's like Wish. And he came up to me the second leg and he's like, oh man, I wasn't too happy about that one. I thought it was funny, but like, go easy on me this time. I was like, oh, that's so funny that people are a little bit like, whoa, what are you going to say? What's going to happen?
Yeah, they're all watching it. They want to feature.
No, they'll have to do something to do that, even if it's filmy, and I don't mind it. I said I was going to set up a bounty on my own head. I saw, do you know FA? He makes some like content, some rugby content.
Yeah.
I saw him today. He posted a video of like ranking the chat that he gets in games. And I dropped a comment on the video saying, oh, what a way to own it. Because again, you're taking control of the narrative there. And for me, I was like, whoever puts the biggest shot on me in this season will win some sort of stash or some voucher or something like that.
That's good.
To encourage, because people are going to do it anyway. So I might as well try and own it. And I said it'd be like a ×2 multiplier if you give me some good chat afterwards. If you give me bad chat, then it just essentially will eradicate you from it. But if you give me some good chat, and that's just then all of a sudden you start to own it. But then people won't start flying at me a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't personally, of all the ones I'd be doing, that wouldn't be the competition I'd be running. But I like the idea of the constructive chat or trying to get them to put a hit on you. Yeah, I'd be passing on that one. I think it's important sometimes, especially when you do like the game day vlogs. I know there's not that many of us, but it's to be almost like transparent. If you do something really shit, you got to post it, because everyone's going to say, like, all my boys at the club will always be like, straight after the game, they'll say, you're not going to post that knock on, are you? You're going to leave that bit out, aren't you? I'm like, I have to put it in, because if I start trying to make myself look better than I am, that's when I'm going to get found out.
And you are good for that, mate. You do put in like the highs and the lows, and it's that resonance you have with your audience, which goes all the way back to a question I asked a long time ago around advice you have for people trying to get into the S&C coaching space and to have a personal brand. And I think that is such an intelligent answer to that question, because the skill is one thing. Yeah, the marketing is another, actually reaching your desired audience. And you've clearly specified yours and the area you think you can have the best good for the game. But you are a relatable person. You tell stories, you use language in those stories that is incredibly native to certain groups within rugby. And that's how you stand out. You're not afraid to take the mick out of yourself, just the same as a bit of self-deprecating humor goes the world of good in the change rooms with the lads on the weekend. And I think that's your point of difference in terms of really building this audience of people beyond an S&C point of view now into the rugby grassroots world, where you're becoming a personality beyond gym work.
Hopefully it just stays within rugby at least, as I don't have much clue about any of the sport. However, yeah, it's the personal brand thing is important, I think, because being like totally honest, there's loads of coaches out there that have probably more professional experience than me. There's lads out there who've played professional rugby. There's it's not I can try to be something I'm not. And if the highest level I've played now is probably, I think it's level 7, I think. Or we're touching on going regional, but we'll come back onto that. The lads are, it's all level 7. And like, that's what I'm playing at. That's how I train. That's all the lads that all my best mates are playing at that level. So it would be daft for me to try pretend to be, like a Nat 2 player or something like that or try, personify or present myself as that when it's just, that's not who I am. So I think it's important, especially, if you're trying to get into this career, you need to be transparent. You need to know who you're chatting to. And if you couldn't speak about a video, how are you going to speak to your teammates, then you shouldn't post it, because that's your sounding board. If they would rinse you, but they take it in, then it's a good post.
I love that, mate. If you can't say it to the change room for the lads, then you shouldn't say it on social. That's a brilliant way, a good litmus test of figuring out the best way to go around posting your content. And you do post a lot, mate. You do grow further beyond the gym talk side of things as well into the social media space of rugby as a whole and social media as a whole. So we're going to segue lovely into our final section of this podcast of putting the rugby world to rights. I want to get your hot takes, mate, on how we can fix the game. Not that it's in an awful place right now. It's not the best. It's not the worst. But from the point of view of both an S&C coach, but also a grassroots warrior, a social media sensation in the grassroots game, tell me what they think the game could be doing better.
For me personally, it's not even that much of an S&C. There's an element to it, but in terms of the grassroots side of things, I think rugby does an awful job of maintaining players. In my opinion, there's enough eyes on the game to grow it as it is. It's retention of player. So that really pivotal 16 to 18 year, the amount of players that drop out of rugby, so from either mishandling from academies, from junior sections, for example, from like lack of attention, the amount of players that leave clubs and then leave rugby altogether is, if you saw the numbers, spoke to the committee before, my club, about it, it's awful. The amount of players that end up leaving and not playing. Your club, or what's your local club?
Harpenden, RFC, the Cox.
They're a good club, very good club, to be fair. So it might be different for them, but if you saw all the players that went through their system and now no longer play rugby, and you kept them to the, even playing into their like 30s, for example, or their late 20s, the team you'd have would be ridiculous. And although it's not about necessarily how good your team is, it's about the retention of player, it's about the attention to detail and bringing up the younger lads. So I think rugby does a terrible job for maintaining those players, whether that be an ego issue from, they were an Exeter Chief, a Leicester Tiger, however they might have identified as, and then they're going back to play for their club. They might think they're too good for that club. They might resent the club. I think there's a lot of work to be done with regards to maintaining those players, because I think of the lads I've played with and over the years, and I'm the second to last remaining player from my year group. And we had a year group that won Bristol championships, that won Somerset County championships. We were a great team. But now, whether it's injury, work, or whatnot, and the amount of players that dropped off at 16, 18, that was more than half. So I think now, there might be one or two more of us if our club managed to maintain them. I think rugby in general, it's not just our club or the area, they're terrible at keeping players.
That's a brilliant answer. That's a really, really interesting point of view, because you see the same thing from a marketing perspective with banks. Banks don't incentivize new custom anymore. Some do, some don't. They're all about rewarding existing customers and like giving the people who stick around the longest the best rewards, rather than change to our bank, you can get 250 quid. It's like, okay, stay with us for 3 years, you'll get X. And that's what rugby needs to change their perspective to, because you're right, Harpenden being a prime example, they had an age group of lads who probably are a decade older than I am, who filled our team 3 seasons ago. Periodically over the last 2 years, they've had kids, they've retired, they've stopped playing, and our playing squad has diminished in terms of just these characters around the club who used to steer the ship for us and be our key players. And we've got a lot of young lads now. And don't get me wrong, you can look at Wales for a prime example of going through generations of talent and how you've got to build from the bottom back up again to start bleeding in these new talents. But you're right, what effort is going into that age group of lads who are left out of academies. They don't get the professional contract. All they've really known is rugby to play to get paid. So when they drop into the lower tiers of rugby, they don't understand that it's actually also supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
Like
and
it
that's where
can be
the
fun.
best rugby, that's where your best rugby will get played, because you no longer have this thing looming over the top of you that's like, my whole like dream and stuff. Like, yeah, sure, it is upsetting to sort of detach yourself from that identity, but once you've done that, it then allows you to really like take in rugby for what it is, and it is a game. It's fun, like it should be fun. And I think the reason I left rugby for a couple of years was because I didn't have that fun aspect. I only had the looming over, like, oh, what could have been potentially. And look where I am now, and I wouldn't trade this for the world. Like, I'm super, super lucky to do what I do. But like I said, I needed that time out of rugby to come back and then like remove my ego from it and rejoin rugby. And unfortunately, not many lads do that. Not many lads do that at all, or girls for that matter. So it's really hard, I'm not quite sure what the answer is necessarily. I think it is down to the clubs and academies handling players slightly better. I know they're strapped for time as it is, and sometimes strapped for cash, but that seems to be, I think, new eyes. Seems like this nice, like sexy idea, like, oh, let's bring new eyes into the game. And it's like, there's, in England anyway, and Wales and Scotland and Ireland, there's enough eyes on the game as it is. You just want to keep those eyes in.
Too right. And it often revolves around that 18 years old where lads will leave their club to go and play for a university, and it's 4 or 5 years till you see them again, if ever, because they might then move somewhere else in the country. And it's
Yeah.
keeping that culture, and it's classic grassroots rugby here to identify the problem without providing a solution. It is classic that. And we started to delve into it a little bit there around how academies can more of an influence. But I think the solution to this problem lies in the hands of the people. We look at the RFU, perhaps they could do a bit more to chuck some money here and there to make the facilities a bit nicer. But I think it's up to the people to really remember what the whole point is. Like rugby is all about community. It's about being around people. It's not like it's about escaping away from a life on your phone where you're constantly scrolling. As much as I love people doing that because it's great for business, at the same time, I'd rather you go and chat in the change rooms with the boys, get there half an hour early for training, go and have a chat with the fellas in the changing rooms, do that community-based stuff.
The reason they started the game and played it when they were younger was because of the group of friends they had around them. That's what got them to training. That's what they enjoyed getting up on a Saturday for. And it only seems to be that little time when academy and other things get involved that they lose that. They lose the fun side of things sometimes. And they need to, when they leave the academies or whatnot, or their universities, they need to remember like why they began playing in the first place was because it was fun, because of the camaraderie, because of the people you meet and things you get to do. It's such a unique sport in the sense that, at least I know there's other team sports, but something about rugby where you make friends for life. You always make friends for life. The camaraderie, the team, you can get pumped all season, not win a single game, and you're still going to rock up on a Tuesday and enjoy seeing your mates and have a laugh, and there'll be smiles at training.
Hear, hear. And if you're still listening to this episode, then you are a top Norse. So make sure you go and drop a friend a message and be like, you know what? Do you fancy coming and playing touch on a Monday night? Or do you want to come down to training on Tuesday? Nothing serious. Come see the fellas. Because if you are this far into the podcast, you're the kind of person who's going to do that. So be the difference. Go be that person to drop a message and make a change that you want to see in the world. Get those people down to training. And more than that, though, Harrison, if they are listening this far into the episode, then they are a top Norse. How can they help you out, mate? Give yourself a shout out on how someone can help you out with your business.
Well, in terms of the business, obviously drop me a follow and Harrison Trains on Instagram or TikTok. But in terms of like what I want to achieve with the game and helping the grassroots game keep growing or restore itself to having more players again, exactly that. Text a friend, get them down the club. It doesn't matter what style of rugby you're doing, whether it's touch or whether it's your thirds vets team or something, drop your ego, get your boots back on and get back on the pitch.
You know what to do, guys. I'll leave the link down below for Harrison's account. Thank you so much for coming on, Harrison. That was a really interesting conversation, and I'm loving where both your head is at in terms of the business strategy, but also where your heart is at for doing it for the right reasons, mate. It's what I love to see. The grassroots game doesn't get enough love. So here to the grassroots legends.
Cheers, mate. My pleasure.
Easy as that, mate.